Today I'm being joined by somebody who is 16-0. He has 11 KOs. He's a super featherweight, and he goes by DJ, the War Machine Zamora. DJ, appreciate you taking time to come on today, man.
Hey, appreciate you for having
Absolutely, man. Well, getting right to it, though, man. So you're coming off a big win. Hugo Castaneda, fourth round KO. When you break down this, I'm sure you reflect on it a little bit now. What's just going through your mind right now as you kind of reflect on that fight?
I thought I did good. I look back and watched the fight, and I thought I had a pretty good performance.
Hmm.
Definitely one of my best performances so far in my career. There were a lot of things that we were working on in the gym that I felt like really translated into the fight. So I'm really happy about that. Um, of course, nobody's perfect, and there's a couple things that I saw in the fight that I have to work on. So definitely gonna go back to the gym and work on that for my next fight. But overall, I'm really happy with my performance, and you can't be mad at a knockout. So happy
Absolutely.
about that too.
All right, so I do want to ask you about that aspect because you're still at such a young stage. That's really what I want to get into today, so people can get to know you because you're one of the most exciting prospects, in my opinion. And when you talk about just your performance right now, and you're working your way up, you're building yourself up to get to the position you one day want to be at. You're going to get these opportunities where you have these go against these guys where you obviously can get the KOs, you get these things. But like you said, there's a different level you want to get to. You want to be at the top of the game in the future. So how do you kind of look back and dissect the film, dissect your game, where you still say, you know what, yeah, the performance is great, but I know I still want to be better. So what are the things I can kind of correct and fix in my game?
It's always the little things, of course, in these fights, when you win, of course, yeah, you won. But there's things that you can take um that you might have, either I got hit with this shot or, my defense wasn't as tight as it should have been. So
Mhm.
you look back at the fight and you take things like that and you really emphasize it going into the next fight to make sure that when you get back in the ring that everything's tighter and overall you just keep improving, and that's what I want to do. um more than anything, win or loss, just keep improving every single fight and becoming a better fighter. And eventually that's how you get to the top.
What were some of the things that you identified? Maybe some one or two things that you really want to work on as you head into this next camp when you get to your next fight.
Uh Definitely feel like I could have been a little more tighter, as far as, my defense goes. I knew I had the guy hurt, and I feel like I kind of, rushed it to try
Right.
and get the knockout.
Mhm.
So you can see when you watch back the fight, when I go back to the corner in the end of the third round,
Yeah.
my coach is like, hey, stay relaxed. I know you got him hurt, but stay relaxed and just keep
Mhm.
doing what you've been doing. And coming out in the fourth round, I did exactly that, and obviously I was able to get him out of there. So um, definitely just staying more tight and more composed, especially when I know I have a guy hurt and I'm trying to go for the finish.
So when you were getting ready for this fight, obviously it was a big performance. You guys fight in Las Vegas. What was your overall, just kind of like when you look at it overall, like what were some of your takeaways from your opposition fighting against a guy in Hugo Castaneda? He's obviously been experienced. He's got some fights under his belt. What were your thoughts on him overall?
When leading up to a fight, I have a game plan.
Okay.
We of course we look at film and we watch the fights, so we have an idea of what my opponent's gonna come in the ring with and try to do against me. But more importantly, I feel like it's more with me. I feel like when I'm leading up to a fight and I really just look back at camp and my preparation and I feel like no, nobody can beat me, and especially because during camp, you work so hard and you're making the sacrifices. So just trusting in my training and my team, and all the work that we put in camp, really makes me feel like as long as I go in there and just execute and fight the way that I know how to fight, I know I'm going to be hard to beat.
Absolutely, man. Well, as I said, you are a young prospect. I want guys and people to get to know you a little bit better now because you obviously had a journey to get to this point, and you're only 21 years old, but yet you already have 16 wins on your record. You haven't lost yet. You got 11 KOs, and you also have a little bit of a unique story. So I want to kind of get into that a little bit and let people get to know your background. So let's head all the way back though. When you were growing up, what got you in love with boxing? When did that start? How did you start falling in love with the sport?
It was actually my dad.
Okay.
So when I was 7 years old, I was getting picked on at school.
Okay.
And I told one day, when I was at home, I was like, my dad, he found toys in my backpack,
Hmm.
and he had asked me, he was like, why are there toys in your backpack? Why are you bringing toys to school? And I was like, oh, it's nothing. I just gotta bring it. And he was like, "Nah, just tell me what's going on." So, there was this kid, and he was picking on me. He was like, "Hey, you better bring these toys to school, or else, And so I told him that, and he was like, "Oh no, I'm not going for that." So, we got to teach you how to defend yourself. So, at first, it was just me and him, in the house. You know, uh, Training and stuff, hitting mitts here and there. Got a heavy bag, in the garage. But eventually, he started looking for boxing gyms and saw that the Floyd Mayweather had a summer camp um for young boxers,
Hmm.
like a summer program. And he asked me if I wanted to go, and I said yeah. So I went, and that's kind of it. From there, it just took off.
So do you say that that was the kind of the camp when everything I shifted from something at just being a fun thing or something to kind of defend yourself to becoming, this could actually be my career, this is what I want to pursue going forward?
Definitely, definitely. When you're 7 years old, you kind of just do things just because.
Yeah.
And it was cool, at first, but as I started hitting the bags, and shadow boxing, and seeing Floyd train,
Mhm.
it kind of just sparked the fire within me, and just made me want to pursue it even more. And eventually, now it's my passion.
So what about boxing are you so intrigued about then? Like what's the part that just drives you and that you love so much about it?
Well, one, I love the aspect that it's a solo sport.
Yeah.
I played football as well when I was a kid, and never really like the team aspect. You have a great game, but if the rest of your team has a bad game, you still lose. So I definitely like the accountability of it. Having everything be in my control,
Mhm.
um, and just the feeling of winning after a fight. Knowing you worked so hard and just took left no stone unturned when you were training, and just that feeling of gratitude is what really, it even still now just makes me fall in love with the sport more and more every day.
You also have a background where I know you take great pride in it being from the Philippines, just your family background being from there. Can you walk us that? Like, just what does it mean to you to be represented? I know usually have the two flag combination you can walk out with oftentimes. That's a pretty cool flag you got. So you got to walk us through that aspect a
Thank
little
you.
bit, but just take kind of and just discuss what it's like embracing the Philippines.
Definitely proud of my heritage and where I come
Mhm.
from, and my family. You know, Philippines has a deep heritage, and and probably one of the greatest boxers
Yep.
of all time, in Manny Pacquiao, and other great Filipino fighters as well. You got Jerwin Ancajas, you have Nonito Donaire, and guys like that. And I just proud proud to be Filipino, and know that where I come from, there's fighters just like me, and just makes me proud of who I am.
So I know you brought up Manny Pacquiao. I was going to ask you this question. I know it obviously could be a wide-ranging question, may not be the answer here, but is he the guy you kind of base a lot of your boxing ability off of? Is he a guy that you kind of look up to? Is he the guy, or is there another guy you kind of like to base yourself around a lot more or take pieces from?
He's definitely a guy that I look up to.
Yeah.
Definitely one of my favorite fighters. Style wise, no,
Yeah.
I'm more of a boxer, puncher.
Hmm.
Manny Pacquiao obviously is just Manny Pacquiao.
Yeah.
His style is his own,
Yeah.
and I feel like my style is my own. I
Hmm.
take bits and pieces from a lot of great fighters. For instance, guys like Bud Crawford and Shakur Stevenson. I like to look at a lot of southpaws, and
Yeah.
just see the things that they do good, and even Van Rodriguez is another one.
Yeah.
Uh, but just look at things they do well and try to implement it into my style and make it my own, and just really add to my game and just be my own fighter.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I can have kind of when I'm watching your fights, I've seen a couple of them now, and especially specifically this past one I watched. I think you do prefer the combinations. You love being on the offense. That seems to be your go-to, your favorite thing. I know, like you said, defense something you can always improve in different areas, but you like to be on the attack. You like to be a guy that throws combinations, go attack, try to get the KO. Walk us through that mentality. What about that is what's kind of made you be one of your emphasis of your game?
Definitely. As a kid, I've always just liked fighting.
Hmm.
Everybody's always told me, hey, at the end of the day, this kid, he just knows how to fight. And I feel like I've always had that mentality, throughout my career. And I feel like that's kind of where my nickname even came from, the War Machine.
Yeah,
Also, I want to be smart too. And how I go about it. So, you know, it's good to have that mentality, but I also know that I have to, add a technical aspect
sure.
to it and sharpen that as well. So so that I become a more dangerous fighter all around.
When did you get the War Machine nickname? Did that start coming in more recently? Was it a long time? How'd you get it? Give us the story behind that.
It was a while ago. I want to say maybe 11, 12, where
Okay.
it came around. But yeah, in the gym, just working hard, training hard. Everybody, would always say, "Man, you're like a machine. You never get tired. You just train and work and never complain. Never talk about how tired you are. You never, show anything like that, any emotions. You're kind of like a machine." And
Okay.
boxing is a war. So, I kind of just put those two together, and the nickname War Machine came out, and it just stuck with me.
All right, so now this gets a little interesting because you started playing or amateur boxing at about 11 years old, and then you make the pro jump when you turn 16. And obviously, that's not allowed in America. So I believe you went and fought over in Mexico. You got 3 fights under your belt there. Can you walk us through that kind of story a little bit? Like, what was it about saying at that age, hey, I'm not going to go do the amateur stuff anymore. I'm not going to go down that route. I want to start professionally boxing now. Let's get it on with. Like, what led to that decision?
Well, actually, I started boxing at 7 years old, and then so I went through my whole amateur career. But
Hmm.
the decision to come to turn pro came about when I was 15 years old. We were, thinking about possibly going to the Olympics, but because of the age cutoff, I
Hmm.
wasn't going to be able to make it, and I would have had to wait another 4 years, obviously, for another summer boxing Olympics to try and make the run to make the team.
Hmm.
So we figured, we might as well just go pro, start your career early, get your feet wet, really get a good feel for the pro game. So I turned pro at 16 years old and got my first few fights, and obviously in Mexico, and you know uh, that's it from there. That's really the main reason why I decided to turn pro.
So what's that like then? Going to another country, fighting in Mexico. Obviously, it's not your homeland. You're going into a foreign place. You're fighting out there at 16 years old, 17 years old. What was that experience like?
It was definitely a crazy experience,
Hmm.
but it wasn't new to me. In the amateurs, I had uh, 13 international fights.
Okay.
I went to places like Ireland, England, and Hungary. So that part of it wasn't new to me. It was very
Okay.
familiar. But just the fact that it's professional, no headgear. It was a whole different vibe.
Yeah.
Definitely a different feeling, a lot more serious. But you know, uh, now I'm definitely used to it now.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so then we look at your progression since that standpoint. Then you obviously had to develop a little bit. You had to build up your name, and you found some PBC cards there for a little bit, and then you get the big top rank promotional signing, which is about 8 months ago now. I think it was June or July of last year. When that opportunity came to fruition, though, and you officially got promotion, which then obviously it raised the standards for yourself, but it's where you want to be. You're getting more of a kind of a good standard you're at right now. You kind of feel a little bit more probably safer overall in terms of your career at that point. What does it feel like, and what was that experience like now getting the top rank deal?
It was great. especially with Top Rank being, the promotion that it is, and the fighters that have come out of the Top Rank stable. It's definitely a great feeling to be a part of that team, and I'm definitely happy with the way that they're moving me. Keeping me active because activity was the main reason why. Um, well, not the main reason, but it was the main focus,
Sure.
in signing with Top Rank. I just wanted to be more active and more consistent because when I was beforehand, I was only fighting 2 times a year for the past 2 years before that, and I definitely wasn't happy with that. With where I was at and at my age and that point in my career, even still now, activity, is what I need the most,
Yeah.
to really get adjusted to the pro game and really, get more comfortable being in the ring because it's different. Sparring and fighting is definitely different. So definitely the activity. I'm very happy with Top Ranking and how they've been moving me so far.
And so that obviously leads to another question I got to ask you is that you just got to fight in, so I'm sure you don't have anything booked at the moment, but how quickly do you want to return to the boxing ring?
Soon, nothing, solid now as far
Okay.
as fight dates, but I definitely want to be in there within the next 2 months.
Okay.
So yeah, that's definitely the activity. Just want to keep getting back in the ring as soon as possible.
And so, as you said, I mean, this right now when you're young, getting a lot of fights, staying active is the most important thing. Obviously, once you get up to the levels you want to get to, it gets slows down a little bit there. But I have to ask you, you being 21 years old, you probably still at least another year or so away from getting those bigger, big, massive fights and championship type fights or whatnot. So, what's your outline then for the next year or so? How many fights do you want to get? And, like, what's the overall goal that you'd like to set for yourself, or where do you want to be? I should say, even in 1 year from now.
I definitely want to try to shoot for 4 fights.
Okay.
Shoot, if not more, this year. But by the end of this year, I definitely want to be in a position to where I can, possibly fight for a small title either at the end of this year or beginning of next year.
Yeah.
And after the small titles, of course, it's main titles. Um, that'll probably be sometime either next year. But yeah, that's just kind of the projection I see myself within these next 2 years. Just staying active and staying in the ring and positioning myself to be in a position to where I can fight for a world title.
So if you were to say there's one thing you're lacking, one thing you want to improve on to reach the standards, reach the level that you want to reach, what would that be?
hmm I would say just right now, it's just the little things. You know, uh, I have a lot of physical attributes. Speed, power, but there's just a lot of things that you know um, I can improve on, like punching with a tighter fist and turning my shots over. Just being
Mhm.
an overall cleaner. Cleaning up everything.
Sure.
Just uh, roughing out the edges and making sure that I become a more complete fighter. I think that's the biggest thing.
When you look at yourself being 21 years old and you see other guys that are around your age, the guys that obviously are working their ways up, the considered prospects out there, how do you view yourself and what do you think would separate yourself and make you so special for who you are in the future?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah. So when you evaluate yourself and you look at other guys that are considered prospects, obviously, you're looking at guys around 20, 22 years old, that range. What do you think separates yourself? What makes you so special as a fighter?
I think just my style. Very offensively minded.
Mhm.
I'm a guy that likes to fight. But also, in that, I feel like I'm just I I feel like I feel like I'm very versatile. I can
Yeah.
switch up. You know, uh, I can fight any type of style. I feel like that's a big thing that separates me from the other prospects.
When I just talk to you right now, I can also look through your social media. Now, I can tell you seem to have a much more locked in focus than some boxers do. You seem to be a guy that's very humble and really just kind of narrow focused on yourself, looking at what you want to improve on, bettering yourself, and not really caring about the distraction, not really caring about what everyone else is doing. Would you say that's the correct statement?
Yeah, definitely. I was brought up that way.
Yeah.
Being very humble. Um, and just focusing on training and working hard every day. Being very disciplined and just giving 110% in everything that I do, and making sure that I'm a good person on top of that. Be very genuine, and these are all things that were instilled in me as a kid. That I carried with me even to now.
Well, I have to ask you too, because in your bio, you have a Bible verse in there that's a very important one. And I love that Bible verse you have there, Galatians chapter 2, verse 20. It's not the common one you're going to see a lot of people's bios. Obviously, a lot of them will be a lot more just about love or whatever it might be. Yours is just a factual thing. I just wanted to read it real quick. And I want you kind of to break down too why you chose to have that Bible verse in your bio. It reads, I've been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. Why is that the verse that you chose to have in your bio?
I feel like it resonates with me as far as where I'm at right now.
Okay.
Just trusting in the path that God has laid forth for me, and just walking that path without any doubts. Being just walking my path and staying true to myself and not worrying about what others are doing or how they're moving or things like that. Just overall just controlling what I can control and trusting that good things will come, and if you just keep doing what you're doing and working hard, success will follow, and you'll be able to get to where you want to be.
Where would you say has been the biggest moment you've had to rely upon God throughout your career so far? Or life, I should say, even.
I would say probably uh in the end of 2023, heading into 2024. Um, the inactivity uh in between fights. My last fight in 2023, which was July 29th, and then my first fight in 2024, which was June. So that was almost a year, and
Okay.
within that time, I was just training, and not really knowing when I was going to fight next, and that was really tough for me because as a fighter, you just want to fight, and just the feeling of not knowing when or when you're going to be back in the ring, it's definitely not something that I like very much, and
Sure.
so definitely was relying on God at that moment to just kind of steer me in the right direction, and just basically reminding me to just stay focused and just stay be patient, and good things will come in time, like I said, and obviously it did, and now I am where I am.
Absolutely, man. Well, I also had a couple of things I want to touch up with you before I let you go. And one of them is going back a little bit now, but you were a part of a camp with Ryan Garcia a few years ago when he was training for the Luke Campbell fight. And obviously, just being in a camp where you get to be alongside a guy of his caliber has to have been big for your career, learning a lot of things. Can you break that down for us a little bit? Like, what was that experience like?
Yeah, it was crazy. Not only that, but the fact that he was training in Cali at the time, and I was from Vegas, so we were driving down every week, to
Okay.
go out there and spar with him. So just that aspect was crazy, but also being in the ring, training with him, and he at that time he had guys like Canelo in the gym,
Mm,
Oscar Valdez, Luis Neri.
mm.
Um, Eddie Reynoso. So just being around them and seeing how they run things was a crazy experience for me. And it's funny because one of the first times we sparred, when they had brought me out for a tryout, Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. was there,
Mm.
and he watched the spar, and I went back to the corner and I was telling my dad, I was like, man, it's crazy. It's me and you against, sparring against Ryan Garcia, Eddie Reynoso, and Julio Cesar Chavez in the other corner. And I was like, man, that's super crazy. Yeah, the whole experience was great. I definitely learned from it and became a better fighter. Um, you know, got to train beside, Canelo Alvarez and Ryan
Mhm.
Garcia, and like I said, and they gave me tips too, for the sparring, and it's helped me become who I am.
That had to be pretty crazy. I mean, obviously Ron Garcia is great, and he's still a current active fighter. I mean, Canelo is too, but I mean, we're talking about legends right there. You talk about Canelo being around, you talking about Julio Chavez. I mean, you're talking about guys that are all-time great. Eddie Reynoso is obviously an all-time great trainer now. What he's done in his career, being in that atmosphere at the young age. 'Cause I think you were what was it, like 17, 18, 19 years old, somewhere around
Yeah,
there.
17.
Yeah. So I mean, 17 years old. That's high school age, and you're around legends right now. That had to be kind of shell shocking for yourself a little bit. What was that just overall like?
Yeah, it was crazy, and it's funny you say that because I was actually still in school.
Okay.
I was homeschooled, obviously, but
Hmm.
after training, I would have to go back home and get on the computer and make sure I still got all my assignments done. So doing all both of those things at the same time was definitely crazy. But as far as the experience, like I said, it was just surreal. You really can't put a price on that, you know, whether it's the things that, the tips that they gave me, or, just being around them and around the energy. Canelo, obviously world champion and undefeated. So, just seeing what they're doing and their mindset and how they train, and, you know, even the way they carry themselves was definitely big for me at that time.
What would you say is the biggest lesson that you learned from them? Whoever it was, whether it be Canelo, Julio Chavez, Ron Garcia, what's the biggest takeaway you learned from that camp?
Um, one of the things that Canelo told me, he said you're good. You just gotta trust in your offense more.
Mhm.
They're and during the sparring, we had good sparring, and he was saying you're landing these good shots, but you're always either getting out, or you know too focused on trying to get away, where you when you land these shots, you have an opportunity to put more shots on after. So, just trust me in my offense.
Absolutely, man. Well, I got a couple more questions before I let you go. One of which we're gonna kind of flip side and just gonna get your boxing mind. I want to hear from it because that's this weekend. There's a pretty big fight going down in your weight class. We got Ray Ford and Matisse going at it this weekend. So I just want to hear you from an analyst, expert kind of mindset. Who do you got going to win that fight? What's your thoughts on that fight? Break it down for us.
I think Raymond Ford is gonna, win this fight.
Yeah.
I've gotten a chance to actually spar with Raymond Ford.
Okay.
So he's definitely a great fighter. Got great high IQ. He trains with, Shakur. He's in the camp with them, so he has that as well. And I haven't seen too much of Matisse, but um, I feel like Raymond Ford just, you know, has the IQ, and
Yeah.
to be able to adjust to anything that Thomas Matisse is gonna, bring to him. And he also has the experience, being, with his record and the guys that he's fought. So I don't think, Matisse is gonna bring anything that he hasn't seen,
Okay.
uh, as far as that goes as well.
So you mentioned you spar with Ray Ford. How'd that go?
It was good. It was great. It was great sparring.
Hmm.
We've actually sparred for a few different camps. So
Okay.
um I probably sparred him about 4 or 5 times, and it's been great work every single time. Very smart.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. Well, I got a couple questions before I let you go. One of which is that you do have pretty much a pretty famous style that's kind of going for you, branding yourself with your hair right now. So I got to ask you about that a little bit. What's the backstory behind that? Has that kind of been something that you had at one point? You just kind of said, okay, well, people are catching on to it's kind of my branding in a way now, or give us the backstory behind that.
No, okay. So the hairstyle is called a shag.
Uh huh.
And I had short hair beforehand, and
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to grow it out, but I didn't really want all the problems of having like a big
Yeah.
old fro and stuff.
Fair enough.
So at the time, the mullet was like the thing,
Hmm.
business in the front, party in the back.
Yeah.
But I kind of wanted to be a little bit different, so I was like, hey, let me do the shag, let me try it out. And now that I have it, it's kind of my trademark. I'm really the only person in boxing, I think, that has it. I haven't seen anybody else
Yeah.
um with it. beforehand it was Duke Reagan, but I don't think he has it anymore.
Mm-mm.
So yeah, it's kind of and Errol Spence as well. Also he had it too
Yeah.
early in his career. It's kind of where I first like seen it,
Okay.
but now I feel like it's my thing.
So I'm guessing you're not gonna be letting that go anytime soon, then.
No, 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 definitely not. And I've been
Absolutely.
winning too, so
Fair enough.
it's kind of
You gotta keep it
it's
then.
stuck with me now.
Absolutely, man. Well, if there was one word you use to describe yourself, whether it be on or outside the boxing ring, what would that word be?
One word. That's a good question. I would say very hardworking.
All right.
With anything, discipline, whether it be training or just you know listening to my trainers and stuff and what they tell me. I always put 110% into everything I do. So hardworking would definitely be the number one word that I choose to describe myself.
Love it, man. Well, my final question I was like wrapping up with is when you look at your legacy, I know you're only 21 years old, so you got a long boxing career still ahead of you, but let's try to get your mindset to 15 years, whatever it's going to be down the road. When you do step away from boxing, what is it that you want to be remembered for? What do you want your legacy to be?
I want to be well. One, I just want to be the best that I can possibly be. So as
Mhm.
far as accolades go, like world titles, whatever comes comes. Of course, everybody must be undisputed with multiple division world champion, and I feel like I have what it takes to achieve just that. But
Sure.
I just want to do the best that I can do, and when it's all said and done, I want people to look back on my career and say, hey man, that guy, he fought the best. He didn't duck no smoke.
Mhm.
He worked hard, trained hard, and just he's a great fighter all around. I want kids to look at me and want to try to emulate my style and try to fight like me.
Okay.
Maybe not have the shag like me, but
Fair enough.
just I want to be one of those guys that the upcoming generation really looks forward to. I mean, looks up to.
Mhm.
Like a Buck Crawford or a Manny Pacquiao or Floyd Mayweather. Just I want to be that kind of guy at the end of my career.
Absolutely, man. Well, DJ, I appreciate you taking time to come on today, man. I can't wait to see what God's got next for you, man.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate you for having me on.
Of course, man. You're always welcome on, man. God bless.
You too.